tonight and reporting Scotland. As the country prepares for another band of heavy snow, police advise drivers to stay off the roads unless their journey is essential. It comes after hundreds of motorists were stranded on the M74 last night, some for as long as 12 hours.
It was horrific. It was cold, wet and a lot of no information.
The freezing weather has led to school closures with 40,000 pupils affected.
And I'm in the Borders. The whole area is covered by a weather warning tonight. I'll have the latest from the emergency teams down here.
Also in the programme, RBS bosses defend their decision to close branches, including more than 60 in Scotland. Calls for more school staff to be trained to help pupils deal with mental health problems. And meet Phelps, the swimming hedgehog, and how the exercise has helped him walk again. Good evening. Drivers in much of south and southwest Scotland and some parts of the Central Belt are being warned not to travel tonight as heavy snowfalls are expected to cause significant disruption. More than 200 drivers were stranded on the M74 last night, often as a result of heavy goods vehicles getting into difficulties. Well, in a moment, we'll hear from our reporters who are in the areas expecting the worst conditions this evening. But first, Aileen Clark reports on how the main link road between Scotland and England ground to a halt.
More slush hour than rush hour on the M74 this morning. A slow, snowy and slippery drive. But at least the traffic was moving again and the gritters were able to work. Last night, as the snow kept falling, it was too much for many lorries to cope with. As they struggled and jackknifed on the higher points of the motorway, it produced gridlock for miles and miles. Geraldine Gibson and her family were amongst more than 200 people stranded in their cars overnight.
Snow was still falling heavily, which was lovely and picturesque if you paused for a moment to look at it. But then you sort of got back to reality and thought, oh, wait a minute, we are 60 miles from home and we're stuck on a motorway that people should be driving at 70 miles an hour.
Good girl on you.
Kenneth Anderson and his dog Maisie were heading back from London. He should have been home by tea time last night. He eventually made it back this morning.
It was horrific. It was cold, wet and a lot of no information. We were stuck just north of Moffat for 8 to 9 hours, moving maybe a quarter of a mile in that time period.
With the whole area carpeted in deep snow, Moffat Mountain Rescue Team helped the police check on those stranded and stuck motorists.
They were very well equipped. Everybody we spoke to were very warm. They had plenty of fuel in their engine and their car to keep themselves warm. So yeah, they were very well equipped. They were just it was a long time for them sitting there.
And the First Minister agrees this was a dreadful night for many.
You are sorry for anybody who's in that position. There have been large numbers of gritters there. The problem has been that the gritters have been gritting the road, but the snow has kept falling.
Now on this road just outside Hampton Services, there's still big lorries like that parked. Now that's either because the lorry park was so full by the time they got here last night that they couldn't get in, or they simply couldn't get the traction to make the turn.
Couldn't come in that entrance over there, it was bad. I went down to 12 to get swung round again, get stuck down there for a minute or two again, and then come back up then into the services. So as I say, I was lucky. Mother Nature wins again, but I was one of the lucky ones. I got a space.
Truck driver Paul Mason, though, wasn't so lucky. After 12 hours on the motorway, he travelled only 25 miles last night.
Blizzard condition, the snow were coming sideways, there was drifting across the motorway. Slushy, as it is now, but when you're standing in traffic and you get the snow blizzards, it covers the front of your wagon as well, in front of the wagon, so that when you set off again, you've got a new covering of snow.
More bad weather is forecast for tonight, and police are hoping motorists will heed their warnings to keep off the roads in the worst affected areas. Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland, Lanarkshire.
Well, let's go to Katrina Renton, who's at the M74 in South Lanarkshire. Katrina, what is expected there this evening and what's the advice?
Well, you'll see just now that the traffic's flowing freely at the moment, but that's of course because the weather's not expected to worsen for a wee while yet. But where we are now is one of the badly affected areas overnight, and police do not want to see that happening again. And as similar conditions are forecast, they've issued their highest warning to motorists, saying to them effectively, do not drive. And if you do drive, you face severe delays of several hours. They say that congestion on the road can stop emergency services from being able to get through and from gritters to being able to clear the road. Now, HGV drivers have been given specific advice to drive with extreme caution. Of course, many of them use this main road between Scotland and England. They may also be asked to park up in a safe place by police. Of course, as you heard there in Aileen's report, abandoned vehicles on the carriageway were one of the problems today. Now, the weather warning runs from 9 tonight till 5 in the morning, but of course, as people learn today to their cost, that could have a knock-on effect on the morning commute to work.
Thank you, Katrina. Well, as we've heard, another part of the country that may be affected by heavy snowfall tonight is the Borders. Our reporter Cameron Buttle is there. Cameron, it's been a difficult day with you, and it's forecast to get worse.
It is, Jackie. They're expecting what's been described as a snow dump sometime after midnight tonight. Another 3 or 4 hours of heavy snow, potentially across all of the Borders. About 20 centimetres, another 20 centimetres on top of the 20 centimetres they had last night. So they're expecting some severe problems tonight. I'm joined just now by Jim Fraser, who's the Emergency Planning Officer of Scottish Borders Council. Jim, how bad are you expecting it tonight and how are you preparing?
Well, we do have an amber warning from the Met Office in place from 10 o'clock this evening until 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, and they're estimating.
Apologies, we've lost the satellite link there. I don't know if the weather was involved. We'll try and bring it back to you. In the meantime, although the snow hasn't affected the entire country, it has caused widespread disruption. In total, around 40,000 school children have had the day off because of the wintry weather. Katie Hunter has a roundup.
The lights were on, the classes were off. From Kingussie High School in the north to Selkirk in the south, around 300 schools were shut today, affecting about 40,000 children. The snow has been causing disruption on Skye. School buses were stuck behind a jackknife lorry for 4 hours yesterday evening. More than 30 children were eventually taken back to Portree to spend the night in their school hostel.
So they were cold, they were tired, they were hungry, but as far as I understand, the bus drivers did an amazing job keeping morale up.
Conditions have been challenging in North Lanarkshire too. No one was injured when this runaway lorry careered down a road in Glen Mavis. Dozens of gritters have been out on roads around Glasgow, and there's no respite on the horizon.
Over the last 24-hour period, we have seen some horrendous weather conditions. We've had guys working 24 hours a day. For the next 24-hour period, it's looking much the same, but we have, as I say, we've got resources in place to deal with that.
This satellite image shows how widespread the wintry weather is across Scotland. One of the few places to escape, Aberdeen, an apparent oasis of calm weather. But while people are enjoying some sunshine in the northeast, they've been sledging in the southeast. No sign of golfers at Melrose Golf Course.
I love being here because we always make jumps and go over them.
We're enjoying it. Been sledging since first thing this morning and making snowmen, so no, it's all good.
We have been jumping over jumps on the golf course because it's really, really fun.
And you're off tomorrow as well?
Yes.
Pleased?
Very.
But the prospect of more wintry weather won't please everyone. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland.
Well, let's go back now to Cameron and his guest, Cameron.
Well, I think the weather's playing havoc with our signal. Jim Fraser, Emergency Planning Officer, advice tonight, expecting that big snowfall tonight after midnight.
Yes, that's right. We have a Met Office warning in place until tomorrow morning, and we've received advice from our colleagues in Police Scotland this afternoon that people in certainly in the central parts of the Borders and southern parts of the Borders, please do not travel tonight unless it's absolutely necessary.
And the schools are closed tomorrow as well?
Yeah, the schools are closed this morning. We made that decision with our partners about midday today, that due to the weather that we're going to receive tonight and overnight, we decided that it was pertinent that we could close our schools tomorrow.
What about general advice for people down here in the borders?
I think the people on the borders are very resilient. They tend to look after each other in times like this, and we're not inexperienced when it comes to severe weather. And we hope that people will help each other, look after their neighbours, etc., out in the communities.
OK, Jim Fraser from Scottish Borders Council, thank you very much. Schools closed today and tomorrow. Some people have missed their exams. Don't worry, the council says you can sit those exams sometime next week.
Oh dear, Cameron, thank you. Sting in the tail. Now other news. RBS bosses have refused to reconsider controversial branch closures despite widespread cross-party criticism. MPs on a Westminster committee said the response to the bank's plans to shut 62 of its branches in Scotland was overwhelmingly negative. RBS officials insisted the bank was responding to changes in customer behaviour, including increased use of online banking. David Henderson reports.
Preparing her accounts before the start of business, Penny Davidson runs an antiques and coffee shop in Duns in the Borders. But her local branch of RBS, just across the street, is set to close, which makes her job that bit harder.
With cash, you can't put it online. I mean, I can do online banking, but I can't get rid of cash like that. I need the personal bank right there.
So for Penny and other customers in this busy market town who need to use the Royal Bank of Scotland, the nearest branch will soon be over the border in England. In all, 62 RBS branches in Scotland face closure in the coming months. Most are in small towns and villages, and for the bank, it marks a major retreat from our high streets. Today at Westminster, a testy encounter between MPs and the RBS bosses in charge of the closures. Time and again, the same concerns.
What's also disappointing is your defiant response to this, where you're singularly saying that you're refusing to reconsider any of these closures, which is going down particularly badly in a number of rural areas.
And time and again, the same reply.
And this isn't about saving money. This is about making changes as customer behaviour is changing. It's a very difficult transition to make, and it's a very difficult decision for us to make. But you know, as we think about how customer behaviour is changing, we need to respond.
RBS say customers are changing how they bank, with fewer people going into branches and more banking online. But the banking union say it's about making RBS
an attractive proposition for investors to reinvest in the reprivatised bank, probably sold off at some considerable cost to the taxpayer, yet again, who's already bailed them out for $45 billion.
The bank's closure plans are not opposed by a key stakeholder, the Prime Minister, who said she won't intervene with what she calls a commercial decision by RBS. But the gap that the bank leaves on many Scottish high streets will be difficult to fill. RBS aims to plug that gap with more mobile banking, vans like this one, which travel from one community to the next. But business groups warn much more is required to serve customers living outside our big towns and cities. David Henderson, reporting Scotland.
A nun has admitted hitting children at Smileham Care Home in Lanark. The 77-year-old, who can't be named, has said she felt sorry for those who felt hurt. Maura Kinneber reports from the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry.
The sister said she would chastise children who misbehaved by giving them a slap on the hand. She said it was never aggressive. She did not lose her temper. If one child hit another, she would talk to them, gently take one child aside and give a slap on the hand.
The nun worked for almost a decade at Smileham Park in Lanark in the 1960s, describing it as a happy, carefree home where children were cared for, loved and looked after. But former residents say she punched, kicked and battered them. In evidence, they said she force-fed and humiliated them, called one the devil's child and scum, became psychotic. The sister denied each claim, saying no child was ever treated like that. It did not happen.
In written evidence, another sister said the older nun had once shown her marks she'd made on a boy who she'd beaten after a pillow fight because she was ashamed of what she'd done. The 77-year-old told the inquiry she couldn't remember that. She said, "I hope it didn't happen. I don't think it did. If that happened, I'm terribly sad." She didn't know why there were so many allegations against her, saying, "I'm very sorry the number of people brought up in Smileham feel they've been hurt in their young lives. For them, I'm sorry." The inquiry continues. Maura Kinneborough, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
It's 17 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. As the country prepares for another band of heavy snow, police advise drivers to stay off the roads unless their journey is essential, after motorists were stranded for as long as 12 hours last night on the M74. And still to come, meet Phelps, the swimming hedgehog, and how the exercise has helped him walk again. Many more school staff need to be trained to help pupils with their mental health problems. That's according to a leading charity which claims most teachers currently feel ill-equipped. It's calling on the Scottish Government to create a national training programme, and soon. Here's our health and social care correspondent, Shelley Joffre.
Mental health support is at the heart of everything this Stirling school does, led by a physical education teacher who's passionate about emotional health.
There is a huge shift within our school, both with the young people and the staff. Young people are very, very forthcoming at talking about mental health now. We started a young group of pupils and we put out an advert, who would like to be a mental health champion, not knowing who would turn up for that, and we now have 33 people put their name down.
In the library, they've created The Hub, a quiet space for pupils to use when they're down.
I've come in a few times and seen some people sitting here, and sometimes they sit with the teacher and talk to them as well, just themselves.
It's also reassurance that even if you don't have bad mental health or you're worried about getting it, then you know that if you do, or if you feel bad about anything, you have someone to turn to or somewhere to go.
Boys, because they're boys, say, "Oh, it's a mental health problem, I'll just leave it." But some people can be like, "Oh, it needs to be sorted." So I think that it would be really good that they would speak to a teacher or come to the health hub.
14 teachers have been trained as mental health first aiders to help pupils in crisis.
This school is streets ahead of most others in Scotland. There's actually no national strategy in place for how schools should deal with mental health, and the survey suggests only a third of teachers think their school has the right measures in place.
SAMH's call on the Scottish Government is to have a national approach to this, to have a national programme for training for teachers and other schools-based staff, for that to be consistent and for that to be on teachers' terms. They know what it is they want and need in terms of training to be able to make a real difference to the mental well-being of young people.
The Scottish Government is currently reviewing the role of counselling nationally in schools. It says decisions on how best to support pupils should be based on local circumstances and needs. Shelley Joffre, reporting Scotland, Stirling.
Total output from the Scottish economy grew by only 0.2% between July and September last year. That's half the rate of the whole UK. The figures published by the Scottish Government show the production sector, including manufacturing, was up more than 1%, but construction was down for a seventh quarter. Across a full year to September, Scottish GDP grew by 0.6%, while the UK economy as a whole grew by 1.7%. Politicians in Westminster are about to vote to send key Brexit legislation to the Lords. The withdrawal bill has been criticised by every Scottish party for the impact it could have on devolution unless changes are made. And one Scottish peer is warning the Lords might try and scupper the legislation if there's no agreement with Holyrood. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley is in Parliament tonight. So Nick, what's the latest?
Well, Jackie, MPs in the Commons up there are just making their final votes on this. We're not expecting any drama. I think the government will win those votes fairly comfortably, including an SNP attempt to have this all thrown out at the last minute. And then this crucial legislation moves that way to the House of Lords. Now, we know that all the Scottish parties agree there have to be changes to this legislation on the areas that affect devolution. But just how easy will that be? It's proving tough work, building up the infrastructure needed for Brexit and keeping everyone happy. In here, the Cabinet Office, they're trying to find common ground with the devolved governments. The withdrawal bill, converting EU law into UK law, is a key sticking point. The Scottish Government says it won't give its backing at the moment. And it's now going to be left to the Lords to make the changes everyone agrees are necessary. That's what's behind much of the anger this week, that as of tonight the decision will be left to peers rather than MPs. Now, the UK Government says it is still committed to changes. It will fully consult with the Scottish Government. Scottish ministers will be here in a few weeks to tell peers what they want. But remember that not every party is represented in the House of Lords. The SNP aren't there, so they'll be trying to find surrogates to make their case. This former Deputy First Minister of Scotland is one of them.
Yeah, I've been talking to a number of people, including SNP MP and crossbench peers. I think there's a genuine will to see if we can to go forward on areas where there's a substantial measure of agreement to try and find a way forward, and I'm happy to play my part in that.
He also says if the government does make the changes it's pledged, they might not be enough.
They've made a promise, Secretary of State has made a promise, they've got to honour that promise, and then we'll consider, in fact, whether what they bring forward does honour the promise they made.
What if ministers here don't reach agreement with the Scottish Government? A warning tonight.
I think if the Scottish Parliament refuse to give it a legislative consent, then the House of Lords would be within our rights to say this bill cannot go through until it gets a legislative consent motion from the Scottish Parliament, and that could scupper the bill completely.
Nobody from the UK Government was available to speak to us tonight, but in a statement, a spokesperson said, "We have made good progress in our discussions with the Scottish Government on common frameworks, and we look forward to making significant further progress over the coming weeks. We have made clear that we will bring forward an amendment to Clause 11 in the Lords, and are confident we can get to a position which has the support of all sides." For now, work to build that consensus goes on. Nick Eidley reporting Scotland, Westminster.
A long-standing dispute over equal pay for some women workers at Glasgow City Council finally looks set to be resolved in a move which some claim could eventually cost £500 million. It centres on the way some jobs were previously graded, with women earning less than men doing jobs deemed to be of equal value. Now, the council has agreed not to return to court and will hold detailed talks with the unions. It's likely to lead to a pay rise or compensation for thousands of current and former staff. 3 oil rigs that were due to be towed to India and Bangladesh to be scrapped can't be moved from the Cromarty Firth, where they're anchored. The Scottish Environment Protection Agency has issued an order banning their movement, saying it has concerns about the rigs' destination and disposal. Now, to help you brave the chill tonight, the heartwarming tale of the hedgehog who learned to walk again through hydrotherapy. I think that's all you need to know from me. Suzanne Allen can tell us more.
Meet Phelps, the 5-month-old hedgehog. He was found struggling to walk in Alness in Easter Ross last November and brought here to the SSPCA Animal Rescue Centre in Alloa. His hind legs were too weak to hold his body.
Well, the vet suggested physiotherapy, but he wasn't really up for that. He just kept curling up in a ball, which makes it really difficult to get his legs out, obviously. So we tried him in water, and they won't curl up when they're in water. So he just started kind of swimming basically in the water. It's just very shallow, and yeah, that seemed to work.
A week of intensive swimming lessons have earned him the name Phelps, after the world's most decorated Olympian swimmer, Michael Phelps.
The hedgehogs do really well with their baths, because sometimes we'll give them like antiseptic baths if they've got wounds and stuff as well, and they seem to quite enjoy it. So yeah, he did really well.
Good nutrition and a bit of TLC mean Phelps is now thriving. Come the warmer weather, he'll make his way back into the wild.
We have different sites that we release them, just that we know are good for hedgehogs, that they're going to be safe, that there's other hedgehogs doing well in those areas.
But for the time being, he'll carry on enjoying the good food and warm, safe lodgings. Suzanne Allen reporting Scotland, Alloa.
Well, I hope the cockles of your heart have been warmed. Here is Christopher to chill them once again.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there, good evening to you. Well, our spell of wintry weather continues. You know, in places we've seen more than a foot of snow. In fact, these 2 locations close to the M74 where we saw all that disruption, but elsewhere across a good part of the country, snowfall causing disruption. And we have a further Met Office amber be prepared warning in force tonight across a good part of southern Scotland. Here's why. This deep area of low pressure pushing in off the Atlantic as that rain bumps into the cold air that's overhead, well, readily turning to snow. Ahead of it, generally dry, cold and frosty, but from 9-10 o'clock, that system works its way in from the west coast through parts of Dumfries and Galloway in towards Lanarkshire and the borders. And it will be heavy and there will be significant disruption, not only on the trunk routes labelled there, but on smaller routes out with them at times too. The northern extent of it still open to doubt. The latest thinking probably not quite reaching as far north as Glasgow and Edinburgh, but certainly sort of Hamilton southwards, likely to see a significant amount of snow. Further north, generally dry, cold, frosty and icy. Wintry showers though in the northwest, and they've got their own Met Office lower yellow be aware warning. So it's a cold, frosty, icy, wintry night, and once the amber goes, it stays wintry, the lower yellow warning with us in various forms right through the rest of the week. So to start the day tomorrow, most of that heavy snow is cleared away, but of course it's still on the ground, there's still going to be disruption from it. But for most of us, for most of the day, weather-wise, well, it's a case of brisk west-northwesterly winds driving in showers. Fewer in number compared with today and yesterday, but where they occur, we could well see some accumulations of snow to all levels. Out with them, plenty of sunshine, crisp, cold, and with light winds, reasonably pleasant actually. Temperatures up to 4 or 5 Celsius, and once again the northeast seeing very little in the way of anything wintry at all, but plenty of sunshine out with those showers wherever you are. Rest of the afternoon into tomorrow night, and once again wintry showers coming in from the west, and they could well band together at time to give a longer spell of snow. Certainly first thing Friday morning, that's one period in time that we are watching. We could see some disruption across western Scotland, and through the day on Friday, further wintry showers, driest and brightest the further east that you are. But once again, it really will be cold. Temperatures barely above freezing in places, a risk of ice. But the main risk for significant snow is tonight across southern parts of the country. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. And the weather gives us tonight's main news. Drivers in much of south and southwest Scotland and some parts of the central belt are being warned not to travel tonight as heavy snowfall is expected to cause significant disruption. More than 200 drivers were stranded on the M74 last night, often as a result of heavy goods vehicles getting into difficulties. And that's Reporting Scotland. I will be back with our late bulletin, which is just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from all the team across the country, good evening.